All right, welcome to our third and final session of the volleyball portion of the NMOA State Clinic. Our first two presenters were absolutely phenomenal, and Steve Franco with rules and points of emphasis, and Kaylee Kimura with communication, and absolutely just two legends of the game that are about to present on evaluations. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to Dana so she can introduce these two veteran legends.
All right, man. I don't know, calling them legends to start it off. You're setting the bar really high, Nate. Good morning again, everybody. And as we've moved along in the NMOA, one of the things that we're really trying to get done in all of our sports is more and more attention toward evaluation. And these two gentlemen have been very active in helping us get this underway here in New Mexico. And last year, we made the best that we could out of COVID time and did some evaluation training. And it's something that we had potential evaluators go through, but as officials, you want to know what that evaluation process looks like. So these two will be going over that. And you all probably know these guys, but I'm going to give you their bios so that you can get to know them a little bit better if you don't. So our first presenter today is Geoff Freeze. His interest in officiating stemmed from his participation in organized sports. He officiated his first basketball game in 1978, which I had no idea that Geoff had been a basketball official. He was actually a varsity player working a mid-school game at that time. And then he worked his first volleyball match in 1979, again as a varsity player, because he was a state or a place where there was boys high school volleyball, so that's good. And he worked mid-school at that time. He started working with the NMAA and NMOA in 2008, and he has gone on to work 8 NMAA state volleyball championships, and he's been really essential in the development of this evaluation system. Geoff has told me that 43 years after his first assignment, he still loves it. And just a personal side note about Geoff, every year at the state championships when he's worked, we always have kind of an ongoing joke because Geoff, he's just so willing to always work and help out. He'll go, okay, when's my next match? I'm like 2 a.m. in the parking lot. And he's like, okay, I'm there. So if you ever hear anything about the 2 a.m. parking lot match, that's where Geoff will be. So just look for him outside of Santa Ana Star Center. Our other presenter is Yancy Montoya, and I went alphabetically. No other reason for that, Yancy. So I wanted to let you know. Yancy has been refereeing volleyball for 18 years, and he's worked 5 NMAA state championships. He's been a part of the leadership group for the Central Region for the past 10 years, which it's kind of, I don't remember a time where Yancy wasn't involved in a leadership capacity within the volleyball community. He's been a Division II referee in the RMAC for a decade and has been a Division I line judge for 18 years as well. Yancy has served as a USA volleyball referee for 18 years and is a USA Junior National referee. Along with Geoff, he's absolutely been crucial in the development of this evaluation system. And I'm excited to have both of these guys talking to the whole state about how the evaluation system is going to work here in New Mexico. And oops, sorry, I almost just left the meeting. And we're glad to have them here. We appreciate their willingness to talk to you all about this. So as is the case for all of our meetings, if you've got any questions as you go along, go ahead and put them in the chat, or if we've got time at the end, we can defer until that time. So Geoff and Yancy, I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
All right, thanks, Dana. I need to share this thing about gentlemen and legends, though. We didn't sign up for that, so.
Sorry, we'll rephrase.
Okay, here we go.
These two yahoos that are getting ready to present, is that better? Steve gives 2 thumbs up.
You guys hear me? Can somebody? I think I may have locked. Did that? Oh, okay. I heard you for a second, Nate.
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't. Now you're back to not sharing.
Yeah, okay, let me try again. My computer's been acting up, but I got another one here as backup. Let me try this one more time. All right.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So hopefully it'll stay stable here for a while. So like Dana said, we're going to give an introduction to the volleyball officials evaluation system. It's an evaluation system, but we believe it equally important as it contributes to training and improvement. Again, it's myself. There's an action photo of me and Yancy giving the presentation. There's an action photo of Yancy. All right, so today we're going to talk about, first I'll give a little overview of what the evaluation system is and why we think it's a good idea. A little bit about the implementation of it, what we've done so far. Dana mentioned a little bit about the training and what we hope to do in the future with it. And then Yancy's going to talk about the specific components of an evaluation and what you should expect when going through an evaluation. So first, part of the overview, what exactly is the evaluation system? So it's a structured system for statewide ratings of officials, and hopefully it would be consistent throughout the state. I think most of the regions use Arbiter. Most people are familiar with Arbiter. So within Arbiter, every official gets a rating as an R1 and as an R2. And those ratings range from 100, which is the highest, that's the very proficient officials, down to 500, which is sort of the new officials, novice officials. Those ratings guide the assigners and assigning officials to matches commensurate with their ability. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, how we can match up the official ratings to the level of play of the various schools. So this process was developed. It was a glimmer in Dana's eye. She passed that glimmer on to myself, Yancy, and Steve Franco. Steve's part of this team too, but since you already got to hear Steve talk for an hour, you're just stuck with me and Yancy for now. This process is patterned after other evaluation programs, specifically USAV and the PAVO, which is what governs the NCAA officials. And I want to point out that, while we're presenting this, this is the result of several years of work and input and development from several other people. I want to specifically acknowledge Lisa Roberts, Nora Carter, Cedric Allrunner, and Jim Farmer for a lot of input. Also, last year, and I say last year because, as we've talked about, COVID 2020 doesn't actually count as a year. And so I've also heard that you don't have to count your birthday either if you don't want to from the COVID year. But so last year, 2019, Yancy and I went down to Las Cruces for a tournament, high school tournament down there, and we worked with Brad Burgess and John Viescas to help introduce them to this system, and we got a lot of good feedback from them. We've gotten some input from Rosita Chavez in Farmington. We've had some discussions with Ina in Santa Fe, so we've already got some good input and feedback from around the state. And also, we have been doing these evaluations in the central region for several years, and we've evaluated a number of people and got a whole database of information. So why do we think this is important? Why was this a glimmer in Dana's eye? Most importantly, is for the development and advancement of officiating skills. Yes, an evaluation is, quote, a test, but what you're really getting is you're getting detailed and formal feedback about what you do well and areas that you need to improve in. And that's the key thing. And towards the end, when Yancy goes through the actual evaluation sheet, you'll see all the different areas where you can get information. Currently, I mentioned the central region. We're doing this somewhat formally, but currently evaluations really are only occurring at the state tournament. Those of you that have officiated in the state tournament have participated in the post-match debriefs, typically with Nora or Johnny. I think I've done 1 or 2 years as well. So that's the kind of feedback you're going to get about the various aspects of the matches that you work. And this evaluation and training process will both support and integrate with the new NMOA requirements for camps and evaluations. And I'd actually like to ask Dana or Nate or Tammy to jump in here. I guess my understanding is that these requirements for the camps and evaluations are to qualify for state, but maybe that's not quite right.
So Geoff, that is correct. So the way it worked is the executive board and then the officiating population actually voted via referenda to have a camp requirement and evaluations. So because of COVID, we're kind of a year off, but that's okay. We'll cycle in. So you have to have 1 camp in a 3-year period in order to be eligible for state. And then you have to have an evaluation on file in that year to be eligible for state as well. So obviously this year is kind of going to be the first year of implementation, and it'll cycle in starting next year as far as the eligibility goes. So we'll be working with the area, the local or the varsity regional assigners on getting camps established in each region. So that way people aren't always having to travel into Albuquerque or into Las Cruces for those. So more information will be coming, but that did get passed kind of in a weird year. Again, the non-year that is COVID, and I am going to take a year off my birthdays. Thank you for that, Geoff. And we'll get that information out as far as how that's going to look. But that will be in the Constitution and ready to roll for the future.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, and so again, so this whole evaluation system should dovetail nicely with that. That particular requirement. And so Dana, you're 29 again, right? Okay, and so the other things that this system can do is it can help reduce the burden on the assigners. Right now the assigners kind of do everything. They do the administrative aspects. They try to figure out who's qualified to do what match. This system, evaluators would be separate from assigners, it'd be 2 different people. The evaluators would develop the ratings, and then the assigners can use those ratings subjectively, without bias, so to speak, to assign officials to matches. They can focus on the logistics and not have to worry about going out and seeing the officials. And I mean, of course, they can still do that, but it gives additional input onto the officials' capabilities. The second thing, the second bullet here, that it reduces the perceived bias in assigning. This is the age-old problem, or the age-old question every official asks, why am I not getting higher level matches? And so it's always been up to the assigner to say, this and that, and it's somewhat subjective. Well, once we have this evaluation system in place, there'll be a documentation. You'll have a rating. You'll have things that you're good at, but you'll have things that you need to work on. And so hopefully it can help answer that question. And again, those questions will go to the evaluators. The assigner won't be on the firing line to try to answer that. And even just the fact that there's now 2 people, there's an assigner and an evaluator, that's 2 opinions instead of 1, which I think is important. So the implementation of the system, I mentioned in the central region, that we've been testing this system for several years. We've developed specific forms, both for R1 and R2. And again, Yancy will be going through those a little bit later. We've done, I didn't actually count them, 60 plus officials have been evaluated. I bet we've probably got over 100 evaluations for those 60 plus officials. And as I mentioned, we introduced this system to the Southwest region in 2019. The plan is to get a statewide cadre of trained evaluators. The training is ongoing, as Dana mentioned. We had 2 sessions, virtual sessions. What we really need is an on-court session, but of course that's been COVID delayed, but hopefully we'll be able to get to that soon. And as I mentioned, the rollout of a formal statewide system needs to be integrated with these NMOA requirements for the camps and the evaluations. So again, the evaluator training is ongoing. What happened so far? Beginning of last year, regional group leaders and assigners nominated evaluators from all the different regions. As I mentioned, we had 2 online training sessions that were conducted by myself and Yancy and Steve. And we went through various things. How to evaluate? We went through the forms. We went through the ratings. Made the note that how they could be used to guide the assignments. And I think also together with the camps that I've mentioned and that Dana talked about, these ratings can be used to assist with the state tournament selections ultimately. So what would this system look like once it gets implemented? So each region would have an evaluation team. Of course, the members would need to take the evaluator training. The team might be coordinated by the group leader or the clinician. And again, that team is independent from the assigner. In the central region, we have a clinician, and so the clinician is the one who sort of sponsors the evaluation team. And it's not just him. We have a handful of evaluators every year to do the evaluations, and then they're all collected and compiled. But every region can figure out how they, what best works for them. A lot of it depends on the number of officials they have and their availability. Then, of course, you'd adopt this evaluation system using the R1 and R2 evaluation forms. Using the ratings as they're used in Arbiter. Again, people will be rated from 100 through 500. And I guess I do want to point out these Arbiter ratings, 100 through 500, they're unrelated to the NMOA classification levels. These things that are listed here: state eligible, playoff eligible, registered, and apprentice. The NMOA classification levels are essentially track your, for lack of a better word, your seniority. In your first year, you start as an apprentice. Once you satisfy the requirements of, doing a number of matches, attending a number of group meetings and state clinics, etc., you move up the progression till you become playoff eligible and state eligible. But just because you're playoff eligible and state eligible, that doesn't mean you're, for example, a 100 level official. And just because you're an apprentice doesn't mean you're a 500 level official. So these are sort of 2 separate systems. This evaluation system is based on your kind of capability and what sort of matches you'd be able to handle. And again, also identifying what you need to work on to move up to a higher level. So the next part of the system would be scheduling and performing the evaluation. So you want to start by doing initial evaluations of each official in the region. one evaluation, and then reevaluations as you can and as is necessary and as officials might request. Once they've gotten the feedback from the initial evaluation, taken some time to work on things, then if they've improved, they can attain a higher rating. Each evaluation includes both the R1 and R2 components. It ends up with a formal written evaluation, again, using these forms that I hope I'm keeping you guys all in suspense. So when Yancy starts talking about it, you guys will be all excited to see the forms. And then, of course, at the end of the evaluation, there's a post-match debrief where you go over what was observed. Ideally, the ratings include a demonstration of scorekeeping. Scorekeeping, I guess, as we all know, is a key thing. Sometimes it doesn't always come out in an evaluation. It's really only if there's a problem at the table where that's something that can be observed. But we need to figure out how to have scorekeeping be part of this evaluation as well. And finally, the frequency and number of evaluations is dependent on how many evaluators you have. Ideally, everybody would get, say 2 different evaluations, 2 different evaluators. Again, it reduces any sort of bias, and you could get reevaluated every year as needed. But in the central region, we've discovered that's challenging. Primarily because the evaluators are also officiating. So we need to keep working on that. One good place to do a lot of evaluations are at tournaments. And I don't know, Dana or Nate or Tammy, do you know if there's going to be tournaments this year?
I believe that we are going back to normal, and as the schedules have been coming in, they have included tournaments.
Oh, good. Okay. Thanks, Nate. Because of course there's a lot of matches and a lot of officials all in one place at one time. So that's a really good place to do a lot of evaluations. And then finally, compiling and maintaining that information, it's all entered into Arbiter. Again, it provides the assigner with information for match assignments, and also, a key thing that I think that's going to be a bit of a challenge initially, but we'll work through it, is sort of calibrating everything at the state level. Different regions have different levels of play, different levels of experience with officials, and trying to get it all worked out so that we're consistent across the state. So now we'll move into the actual components of the evaluation, what to expect from an evaluation. I mentioned there's both an R1 and an R2 component. Each one has 5 categories: pre and post match, match control, mechanics and signals, positioning and communication, and judgment. And you'll be evaluated both as an R1 and as an R2. I think many of us focus on R1, and we're often better as an R1 than as an R2, but a good R2 is critical and can save a match, especially when things start going wrong. Typically, we'll do it, at least in the central region, when there's a C team, JV, and varsity match all scheduled together, you're able to evaluate 2 people, one in the JV match and then the other in the varsity match, that reverse the role. So they each get an R1 and an R2. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Yancy to talk about the forms and some of the aspects that are actually evaluated on.
Hello, this is the form that Geoff's been talking about. We've kind of narrowed it down. We kind of broke it up. We've kind of put this together for our evaluations for the central region. like Jess said, the pre and post match, and we go over all kinds of different things: appearance, pre-match arrival, captain's meetings, and a lot of times the evaluators will stand there and listen to the captain's meeting, warm up, roster checks, and then on the match control. And then each one of these boxes has an amount of points that we use to come up with a scale. Oh, there's a scale on the bottom right of this form, and we use the points to come up to where we come up with that certain level. Match control, and then this is the second box. Some of them are bolded. As we get into some of the other slides, they'll be more bolded. So it'll kind of give an idea what they look like and what we're looking at. But we go over every single item and we debrief on every single one of them. And we have a rating team that we've come up with, and we all come up and we sit down together and we say, okay, this is what we're looking for on every single match. And then we want to go over that with each other, and we all have our input into what we're looking at and what we're expecting. Mechanics and signals, okay, how they deal with a timeout, how they whistle, the strength of the whistle, the tempo of the match, the R2 signals, and how he communicates with the coaches and stuff like that, positioning and communication, okay, with his partner. A lot of this, I think Kylie went over it in her presentation. It's a lot of the similar stuff because we've taken stuff from USA and we've taken stuff from NCAA, and then we've kind of tweaked it as far as making it kind of for the high school. Then the last box is judgment, the latitude and of play, ball handling. And like she said, ball handling is a big concept, and I think Steve touched on it in his presentation too. It's one of the biggest things, and it's one of the biggest things we've had a hard time getting everybody to be kind of consistent on, and it's going to be virtually impossible, but we're still working on it. So, and that's just for the R1. We also have a form for the R2. So, Geoff, we want to switch it and we'll go over some of the bolding areas so we can. I don't have a hard time reading this one, so. Okay.
Oh, there's a couple things in between, Yancy, before those.
That's fine. That's fine. Evaluation system components, rating levels, 100 proficient, R1, R2. We've actually have some referees that may be 100 level officials in R1 and then a lower rating in an R2. In order to be state ready, you have to be 100 level in both. We try to do that. Also for 200's low level proficient, R1 is most varsity and R2 all varsity. 300 low varsity for an R1, ready to most varsity. 400s and 500s are usually first and second year officials, but at the same time, we're still doing R1 at mid school, R2 at sub varsity, and level 500 in mid school. It's mid school only.
Sorry, Yancy, I want to point out the progression of these pictures. I don't know how well you can see. I'm not quite sure what this official is doing down here, so I figure that's the 500 level. Looks like she's trying to serve the ball or signal something while holding the ball. Whereas up here, this official, certainly has a good presence, seems to be focused on the right thing. So try to be more like this, less like this.
We've gone through and evaluated some of the components of school ratings. We actually went through our area and rated the schools. Okay, now this can change from year to year, but we still go through and do a sheet and re-rate these schools. And we kind of put this together. You can kind of get a general idea. And some of these are even fall into like the Santa Fe group, and a lot of them even Las Cruces and in the southeast also. and up in the Farmington area. Some of these schools play up there also. So this is how we rate them as of the last time it was last year or 2 years ago. So when we put this together, we didn't really get out and able to do very many ratings on schools last year because a lot of them didn't play till later on. So schools are ranked informally and to help guiding the signers. If the 100 level team plays, a 200 level team plays, an official would be ideal, be a 100 and 200. So they'll put a 100 and 200 level official on that. If possible, to try and deviate plus minus 100. So
yeah, Yancy, let me jump in here too. Often people will ask, these rating levels, what do I have to be good at, or what do I have to improve at to be a 100 or a 200? And we're kind of working on those criteria. But another way to look at it is with these ratings is, let's say up here, here's a 100 level, if there's a match between La Cueva and Rio Rancho, for example, or Centennial and Las Cruces, do you feel like you're capable of handling that match? If so, then yeah, you might be a 100 level official. If you're sort of currently more comfortable, say doing a West Mesa and Bernalillo match, that's more of a 300 level official. A lot of the things are the same, but there's things at the higher level matches, pace of play, back row activities, unique serve receive alignments, things like that you don't necessarily see at the lower levels. So this kind of helps. And the one other thing that comes up is this bullet down at the bottom, where we say it would be unusual to attain a rating significantly higher than the teams involved. So, for example, you're doing a low-level 1A match, say these, Oak Grove and Tohajali. You could have a perfect match as an official, but in that match, but that doesn't necessarily equate to being a 100 level official, because you're not necessarily going to see all the things. So just some things to keep in mind.
one of the things too, I've actually put people on matches to where they have it's higher level for them. They want a higher level. How can I get a higher level match? So I put them on a higher level match and evaluate them. And the first thing they tell me is, when I ask them, how do you think the match went? The first thing they tell me is, I didn't realize it was that fast, because they're used to calling maybe a 3A match or a 2A match. There's a lot of difference in the speed of the game for both of them. So considerations for evaluators is the evaluation for promotion, reevaluation to help improve specific skills, determine how best to assist the official to obtain their goals, schedule an appropriate match for evaluation, understand the current rating of the official, understands and expects the level of play for teams, school ratings. It would be unusual for an official to attain a rating significantly higher than the teams involved. It's kind of like what Geoff just kind of touched on that one. So it really helps a lot when they do assigning. If we put these in, I think there was a question that came up by Myra saying, who puts these in? The evaluation team sits down with the assigner, and we put all these evaluations in, and that's where we get them from. So, evaluation system components, what to expect from an evaluation. Know when to be objective. And this was Kylie touched on a lot of this stuff earlier. Application and interpretation of rules. Use the language of the rule book. Follow established NMOA guidelines, protocols, mechanics, and scorekeeping. When I look at to see how they touch on the protocols and mechanics. Those are my two big pet peeves. How do they handle all that stuff? Scorekeeping, a 100 level official should be proficient in scorekeeping. Okay, they need to be able to get it out of any single mess. I've actually walked into a gym and first thing I asked the scorekeeper is, do you know how to scorekeep? And a lot of times they say, no, this is my first time. Well, it's going to be a long night at that point. So that's why it's real important to be really proficient in scorekeeping. Evaluation system components, what to expect from an evaluation. Know when to be subjective. Be a good facilitator of the match. Be aware of the science and the art of the game. Live in the gray, which is a good place to be. You don't want to go in there and say, oh, I'm going to call every ball that moves. It's going to be a double contact. Live in the gray. That it's a real good place to be. Don't want to be black or white. Differentiate between high school and low school level matches. Be fair, consistent for both teams.
Yeah, so just
that question, Todd, was we haven't evaluated. We rate the schools every year. Like I said, a lot of the schools weren't rated last year because some of them didn't play until later on in the season. So we didn't do ratings for schools last year.
Yeah, and so Todd, it's somewhat informal, but best you can do is base it on last year or the previous year. And of course, there's many of the schools and the programs are consistent from year to year, and it doesn't have to be perfect. All it is a guide to try to match up. You don't want 2 400 level officials officiating a match between 2 high level teams, for example.
Geoff, can I make a comment real quick?
Yeah.
So one thing about for the different areas rating your schools, okay, you might want to check with the other regions, like Albuquerque might want to check with the Santa Fe group or the Las Cruces group to find out how their 5A schools are or how their 3A schools are. Would they be considered, say, a 100 or a 300 level school? That way, hopefully everybody in the state can have the same rating for that same school. So before, as a recommendation, maybe before the group up in the Northwest decides to classify their schools, maybe check with, again, the only people that really do this is a central group, but maybe check with the folks in the central group to see how they might have rated those particular schools, because we do have a lot of schools that go up in the Northwest area to play. And then they also, they come down as well. So it's just not a matter of looking at your school and thinking, well, I think there are 300 or 400 school, maybe bounce that off another group just to see what they're thinking. And the person to do that probably would be the group leader or maybe even the assigner or lead evaluator for that particular area. So there's a number of people to bounce the information off of. Thanks.
And I'll jump in here, Steve. I'm happy to help people make a first cut at the school ratings. I've kind of been the one doing it in the central region informally. And in fact, for those of you that have been around for a long, long time, I used to do computer ratings for NMAA for several sports, including volleyball. Don't do that anymore, but I have some sense of where the various schools fit in. All right, Yancy, here's the more detailed ones you were thinking of.
Yeah, evaluation form for pre and post match. Like I said, we'll go over it again. Appearance, uniform, physical condition, pre-match arrival, inspect the net, playing area, captain's meeting, coin toss, warm up, roster check, impartial with the coaches, players, and pre-match, end of set, match administration, and debrief as needed. So a lot of times your evaluator will be in there way before you are. They'll watch you walk in. They'll see you walk in. It's a good idea when we do training. We tell the evaluators, you want to try and be there way before they get there. You can see how they look when they walked in. Are they dressing in front of the table, which I've actually seen? This kind of stuff. So this is the kind of stuff we want to try and make sure we really kind of critique on that, because they have to look professional when they walk in the building. Okay. A lot of times referees for volleyball don't dress in the locker rooms. They dress prior to they walk in uniform. Pre and post match appearance, like I said, it's a good idea to have a good looking appearance and look professional when you walk in there and be ready to work, and kind of find out who your administrator is right away. Therefore, you can get all the information of what's going to happen that evening.
Yancy, also, I want to point out that each of these slides lists both the R1 and the R2 evaluation topics. And some of them are the same, but many of them are different. Even in the pre-match, the R1 and the R2 have some different responsibilities. And so that, I think Yancy mentioned this also, you'll see some ones in bold. That's sort of a judgment on our part of things that might be a little bit more important in each of the topic areas. So like, for example, here, R1, in the warm-up, they're briefing the line judges, whereas the R2, they're briefing the table, talking with the table. So those are the kind of differences. And then, of course, the R2 here has time management. They do the lineup checks, and they're dealing with the table between the sets. So that, they're the ones that are sort of in control of the timing much more so than the R1, just as an example. All right, Yance.
Yeah, I will point that out. A lot of times the boxes for the R1 and R2, the points aren't the same. They're going to be different. Evaluation for match control, presence, conference, demeanor, reaction to pressure, communication with teams, benches, approachable by captains / coaches between bench awareness. Okay. Game management, tempo between points, warnings / cards issued correctly. For R2, presence, confidence, also it's the same. Communication with team benches. R2 is probably going to have a lot more communication with team benches throughout the match, especially with coaches and bench control. Game management, substitutions, timeouts, and bench needs. Warning cards issued correctly per infraction. Okay. Geoff was always getting yelled at, as you can see, like that. So just be, as an R2, you're really going to be controlling the match more than the R1 because you're going to have a lot more to deal with. You're going to have the table. You're going to have both benches, both coaches. You're in charge of a lot of the rotations. You got the nets, you have the substitutions, and you have the Libra awareness. That's a lot for an R2 to have to handle. Because a lot of times their table by themselves is quite a bit to deal with. So, any questions? Chime in.
Oh, yeah, here, I'm just looking at the, sorry, going back through the chat here.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, max ratings. They're okay. They're not great, but that's all right. Oh yeah, here's one. Thank you, Kathy, about pointing out that the number of points is not evenly divided among the different items in the box. So yeah, for example, here for the R1 match control, it's worth 15 points out of the 100 that you get in total. It's not like each one of these is worth, 15 divided by 4. The whole box is worth 15. And so there's a certain amount of subjectivity of how you divide those up. And also the other thing is, this goes back to my comment where if you're doing a lower level match, some of these things might not come up at all. So then, you can't necessarily get credit for something if it doesn't happen. Yeah, I don't know, Yancy, if you want to jump in on how you actually assign the points.
I kind of try to divide the points into the different areas in that particular box. Demeanor, communication, game management, warning. I may split up the points in those, and I would probably give more to communication with team benches, because that's going to be real important. Game management, those are another ones where I'm going to give a lot of points on that particular for an R2. The R1, his communication with team benches during the match isn't going to be quite as much. I mean, he's going to rely on his R2. He's trusting his partner to take care of a lot of that. So that's where I'm kind of split the points accordingly on that one. It just varies, depends on the match itself and how the R2's handling it as the match progresses.
So Yancy, what you're saying is you use priority given the position that the referee is doing. Priority
Yes.
for R2 are different than the priorities for the R1, and the more points, the more important that particular element is to that person at the time.
Yes.
Okay.
So here's another really good question in the chat from Felipe Garcia. He says, this is going to only allow officials from large schools to call state. You may start to lose officials. So I'll make a comment and then I'll turn to, I think I'll open the floor to Nora and Dana and others to comment on that. But so first of all, for state selections, there are always officials from all regions, and it's divided, equitably. I think there are more typically from Albuquerque and Las Cruces just because there's more officials there, but there's always officials from all of the regions. What can happen is an official that comes from a region that maybe doesn't have any 5A schools or 100 level schools, when they go to state, they won't be officiating the 5A matches, but they will be officiating, up to whatever their qualifications are, 3A, 2A, 1A. So I think it's important. Certainly, my observation is it's been very important to Dana and Nora, who I think has a lot, helps a lot with the selection and confirmation of the state officials to make sure that it's distributed throughout the state.
And Geoff, you hit the nail on the head. So as we look at state tournament selections, we do ensure that there's representation from the entire state. We know that officials who work only 5A all year may not really be very good at working A and AA volleyball. And the same goes true in reverse. So if all you see during the season is A and AA, we're not going to put you on a 4 and 5A match at state, but we do want to make sure that there's officials who have competencies at every level so that it's more natural for the coaches and players who are used to a certain type of officiating, as well as for officials to be comfortable with what they're seeing at state. We're not going to put somebody who's had all 4A and 5A schedule on a single A or AA match because the style of play is just too different. So I don't know if that answers your question, Felipe. Nora, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, basically, when you look at the different levels, we always take into consideration who is currently calling 1A, who's currently calling 3A, who's currently calling 5A. In the past, you were not allowed to call the level that you called during the season. The coaches made it quite clear to us they did not like that. They want the refs they've had all season long to continue calling them throughout state. So you can get to state by having a 300 level or a 200 level rating. And especially if the whole rating system is geared upon, can you call any level? That's what Geoff and Yancy have put in almost every slide. You have the ability to call every level. That's a 100 level rep. We know some referees are extremely good at calling 3A matches. They're extremely good at calling 1A. Me, I'm not so good at that 1A, but I could do it. So when you see the criteria they're using, they're based on calling the ability to call any level match. That does not automatically preclude anybody from qualifying to call if we know they're going to be calling 2A or we know they're going to be calling 3A. You still can get the state without having a 100 level rating, because we know you're very good at calling that level that you call. There's room there for people who are not 100 level referees, absolutely.
Thank you, Nora.
And I guess one other thing, as we, this issue about the camps and evaluations come up. In Albuquerque, every summer preseason, there's all kinds of scrimmages, and we locally use those as training sessions for our officials. And, it would be something where we'd be more than happy to have people come from other regions to participate. And at those, particularly people that are wanting to move up, those scrimmages often are, 8 or 10 fairly high level 5A teams. And, even though it's just preseason summer, it's some pretty good volleyball, and it's moving at a pretty fast pace. So it's a great opportunity for people to kind of get exposed to and develop their skills.
And that we've had people come from the southern part of the state, I know that for a fact, come up and participate in some of the scrimmages, and you will work R1 and R2 in those scrimmages. Granted, teams probably are a little bit, they don't have uniforms or numbers and stuff like that, but we're just looking at how they handle mechanics, how they handle the speed of the game, and maybe like ball handling, and they won't have to deal with coaches too much and that kind of stuff, but we tell them this is how you would do this, or this is how we train them.
And I actually have a comment on just when it comes to just any sports officiating. I mean, we are independent contractors, and really we're selling ourselves as individuals, and we are a business, right? We're our own business, and if you want somebody to buy your business, you have to put in the work, and you have to put in the extra effort. And this evaluation tool is definitely going to be a starting point to kind of get you headed in the right direction. Now, with maybe somebody who sees 1A volleyball all year long, and they want the opportunity to work 5A volleyball, well, what are you going to do as an individual to put yourself in a situation to be able to call at that level, or vice versa? If there's a 5A official that wants to work small school volleyball, they need to put themselves in those situations. Now, again, if you are up in Springer and you want to, start working some 5A, take every opportunity you can to get down to Santa Fe or Albuquerque or anywhere in the state that has 5A volleyball, and get as much work as possible at that level. And that goes for any sport. And that's, you can't expect to call at a level that you haven't experienced in any sport. And so you really need to take it upon yourself. One, take the feedback that the evaluators give you and really use it in your game. But two, take yourself out of your comfort zone and actually challenge yourself in the off season. It doesn't, obviously your location in season is where you are. And if you live in an area that has only large school or small school, you definitely are going to call those during the season, but it's what you're doing in the off season that really going to open doors for you. So just my thought.
One of the questions that was on there was let you know, I think Sharon asked the question when the scrimmages are. The scrimmages that I know of are happening at Rio Rancho and La Cueva and Moriarty are all on the 14th of August. I will send that out to you again to remind you and the times. And they're going to have, I believe, La Cueva is going to have 5A, and I think the Rio Rancho will be having the junior varsity for most of those teams that are participating in that scrimmage. Moriarty is having, I believe it is 2 and 3A, and they've got teams coming from different parts of the state. So it's a good idea. I'll get you all that information later on. So that'll help you a little bit. So going back to the evaluation form, we do one for mechanics signals. As far as going as how well we can hear their whistle. Is it loud enough for the players to react to it, to stop? Okay. Your reaction time as to how fast they blew their whistle or they let the play continue. R1 initiates the use of proper sequence, tempo, award the point, ball handling in and out. R2 will initiate the signals for use proper tempo and for net, center line, and sub or timeouts. And they also have the same amount of points on this particular area. But there again, like Nora had pointed out, we're trying to get people in every area to be able to handle all of these in a be real proficient at all of these. Initiate signals for an R1, uses proper sequence, net, center lines, sub, and timeout, whether and how they react to a lot of that stuff. Or do they call center line? Do they wait for their partner to see if they can make that call? Timeouts. Usually, we have a horn that takes care of that in high school. As far as an R2, use proper mirroring, award point, ball handling in and out. Okay, they still give ball handling. They'll still give ball handling. Maybe the R1 can't see it because their back's turned, whether or not it was the ball was prolonged carry, or whether or not maybe they doubled it, something like that, and the R2 can give that signal. Whether a back row attack, whether the person they maybe missed the R1, maybe missed the girl stepping on the line, that kind of stuff, they can give that stuff. Or I think Kylie even said if they don't get it in time on the down ball, get out in a couple seconds and blow that or that back row attack. You can do that as an R2. It's not preferable to do that. Give the signal to your partner to make that call.
All right. So we've actually, just to point out, we've got, I guess, 2 minutes left. I think we've got 2 slides. So that's your challenge, Yancy.
Yeah, nice try. And then evaluation for positioning communication. R1's not going to have a whole lot of positioning. They're standing in one place. So we got 15 points. Transactions, scan before beckoning, during play. Communication with R2, waits for the R2 to see discrete signals like we talked about. Eye contacts, center all the time. Communication with line judges. Steve talked about that in his presentation. Engage the line judges, what I'm trying to say. R2, positioning and communication. There's a lot. I went over all this. Benches, transitions, timely, quickly. Communication with R1. Level, help the R1, touches, pancakes, 4 hits. Communication with table, score, and then tractor. Evaluation for judgment. There's a little bit of difference on points. This is going to go towards more of the R1, the latitude, ball handling, prolonged contacts, attacks on tips, net, center line decisions, lines, touches, antennas decisions, illegal blocks and attacks, position and rotation faults / screening. R2, net faults, center line violations, antenna antenna decisions, position, rotation, faults, illegal blocks, and attacks for help to the WAR1.
And I guess, I just want to point out that this is probably the area where it's both challenging to evaluate, and it's also, I think, the area where distinguish yourself, or, if you're newer to the game, these are the things it takes a little bit longer to become proficient at. And also, it's a lot harder as the game is moving faster.
Evaluation system components. Phew, it's over. Post-match debrief with the evaluator, both officials, otherwise in the next day or two. You may not receive a final evaluation, point value, and ratings at the end of the match, but you will get feedback from some key points. You will receive a copy of your evaluation form, and arbiter rating will be updated.
And the key point there is, if you do a debrief right at the end of the match, the evaluator still has to process the information to come up with the actual points and everything. But, as Yancy said, you'll still get the feedback on the things you did well and the things you can improve on. So that's it. There's contact information for the three of us. Be happy to hear from you. Thank you. Sorry, we're 2 minutes over. That was because of the questions.
Hey, Geoff, could I just make one last comment on something?
Sure.
To everybody, we did kind of open up, or Yancy and Geoff opened up our tournaments for training. If you would like to attend one of those three tournaments that Yancy had mentioned, by all means, be sure you contact us to let us know that you definitely would be interested. Obviously, everything is on your dime. Like Nate said, you have to pay a price to move up. At the same time, earlier in the year, we had evaluator meetings for those that wanted to become evaluators. We'd like to extend that invitation as well. Those training tournaments are a great source to train evaluators. So again, if you would like to step up your skill as a trainer, as an evaluator, we can accommodate that as well, and that's just going to help everybody get to the same skill level. So it's something that we're trying to throw out to everybody. Thank you.
One thing before you go, Nate, that
All right,
scrimmage.
everybody. Oh, sorry, I think I'm having volume issues.
Dana, one thing, the scrimmages are on the 21st. I said the 14th, they're 21st from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Cueva and Rio Rancho.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Okay, Nate and I switched microphones, so I apologize. I just wanted to take a second to say thank you to everybody, all of our volleyball officials. You all are such an outstanding group, and as I go off to my new position, I will miss all of you terribly. We had so much fun during the COVID year with our off-season training and really, just having that camaraderie and friendship that you all have. I love it, and it's something that I've enjoyed being a part of. So thank you for everything you do. Have a great season. Have a great career ahead. And please know that even though I'm going to be in Indiana, I'm always going to be here for you. And if you ever need anything, please just holler. Nate will have my contact information as I move along, but I'm always a phone call away for you. So thank you for your service as officials and for being a part of the NMAA and NMOA family. I'm going to miss the heck out of all of you. So be good, do well, keep being awesome. We appreciate you. All right, I think that's it. So everybody have a good rest of your day. Have a good rest of your weekend. If you're a football official, we'll see you starting at 1. Otherwise, you're free to move about the country, as Southwest Airlines says.
Nora, we'll see you at 1. Did you sign up for football this year?
I am not reffing when I have to be in the elements.
I want to be chain gang. That'd be fun.
Yeah,
Oh,
line
look at
the- yeah. Hey, if people are still on, I do want to say with the evaluation process, it's a good thing. Everybody needs to get some feedback. I remember the first time we had debriefs at state tournaments, people were freaking out and they were afraid. Now everybody can't wait to talk about the match. The whole point of it is to help everybody improve, and we can all improve together. So know that your assigners and your evaluators will not throw you. If you're a 400 level ref and you just want to get to 300, they're not going to throw you in a Sandia La Cueva game. That's higher than where you're trying to get to. They're going to put you at the next step possible. The point is to move you up at a graduated level so you don't get blown out of the water. The last thing we want is a referee being on a stand with deer in the headlight looks, because it's way too much for them. They're going to take you along slowly. We're going to move everybody up. We're all going to improve and get better together. Just be open to getting some feedback and everybody will improve. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming out, and thank you for reffing with us. We enjoy everybody. Bye-bye. Have a good season.
Thanks, Nora. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.